It was a story that shook the ground beneath your feet, not because it was sensational, but because it seemed utterly impossible. A Hollywood legend, revered for his talent and fiercely protective of his privacy, found dead alongside his wife in the sanctuary of their Santa Fe home. The scene was chilling. Two lifeless bodies in separate rooms. A third victim, one of their dogs, also gone. The date was February 26th, 2025. The man was Gene Hackman, a two-time Academy Award winner. The woman was Betsy Arakawa, a former classical pianist and businesswoman. They had shared over 3 decades of quiet, secluded life, far from the glare of Hollywood. Until now. At first, it seemed like a tragic but simple case. Two elderly people passing away in their home, perhaps days apart. But that story unraveled almost instantly. The scene didn't make sense. The timeline was fractured. Then came a legal twist that no one saw coming. A frantic attempt to block the release of the autopsy reports and investigation files. The source of that desperate move? Their only son, Christopher Allen Hackman. Within days, Christopher filed an emergency petition to seal the documents. Photos, reports, toxicology results. He wanted it all locked away from public view. But why? According to legal experts, such a move was not only rare, it was practically unheard of. To investigators, it looked less like grief and more like a cover-up. And then came the question that cracked everything open. Why did the timeline of Betsy Arakawa's death shift? Initially, police believed she died on February 11th. But phone records revealed that on February 12th, Betsy had placed a call to a local medical clinic requesting an appointment. Calm, coherent, and concerned about chest pain, she had shown no sign of impending death. But she never made it to that appointment. That phone call shouldn't have existed. According to investigators, Betsy was already supposed to be dead. Was the date of her death wrong? Or had someone else used her phone? The questions grew darker. When officers arrived at the Hackman residence after a welfare check request, the house was disturbingly still. Packages sat unopened at the door. The mailbox overflowed. And then there was the smell, a faint but unmistakable presence of decay. With no response, the officers forced their way inside. They found Gene Hackman seated in his study, a book resting on his lap. At first glance, it looked peaceful, but a strange, unsettling silence clung to the air. Just 2 rooms away, in the master bedroom, Betsy Arakawa lay face down on the floor. There was no blanket, no pillow, no visible injuries. Yet the stiffness of her body suggested she had been dead much longer than her husband. And between them, in a hallway, the body of one of their dogs, Kibbo, a shepherd mix, motionless. The other 2 dogs were nowhere to be found. From the very beginning, investigators sensed something was wrong. There were no signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle. But why were Gene and Betsy in separate rooms? Why was there no call for help? And why was a beloved family pet dead alongside them? The search for answers led authorities through the meticulously kept home. Computers were seized. Cell phones were collected. Every drawer, every cabinet, every bottle of medication was inspected. Yet what investigators discovered only deepened the mystery. The home surveillance system had been tampered with. The previous 2 weeks of footage were missing, the hard drive wiped clean. Both Gene and Betsy's phones had been powered off for days. And the last text from Betsy, sent on February 11th, felt cold and impersonal, a hollow, hope to catch up soon. Friends later said it didn't sound like her. But it was the autopsy results that delivered the most chilling blow. While Gene's death seemed consistent with natural causes, Betsy's was anything but. Suspicious findings suggested the possibility of foul play. And the dead dog? Toxicology reports hinted at something sinister. Then came the arrest. Christopher Allen Hackman was taken into custody, accused of tampering with medical records, obstructing the investigation, and possibly worse. Investigators alleged he accessed his parents' files and attempted to manipulate the official narrative. But why? What could he have been so desperate to hide? The question spiraled. Had Christopher been in the house before the bodies were found? Was he responsible for the erased surveillance footage? And was his frantic legal maneuvering simply a cover for something far more disturbing? For decades, Gene Hackman had shunned the spotlight. He built a career not on glitz, but on the sheer force of his talent. His performances were unforgettable, his presence commanding. But in his final days, it wasn't his legacy on screen that mattered. It was the unsettling truth inside the walls of his Santa Fe home. Betsy, too, had embraced a life of quiet resilience. A gifted pianist, a devoted partner, and the emotional anchor of the Hackman household. Friends recalled how she once filled the house with music, the soft hum of her piano echoing through the adobe walls. But in the weeks leading up to her death, something had shifted. She became withdrawn, distant, even after a minor surgery that should have been routine. Was it merely illness? Or was something more sinister at play? The deeper investigators dug, the more fractured the story became. Dates conflicted, statements crumbled, and Christopher's motives remained murky. Was it greed? Fear? Or was he protecting a family secret that no one could have imagined? Gene Hackman's death was never supposed to be this. Not a scandal, not a courtroom battle, not a tangled web of lies. But somewhere within the wreckage of those final days, the truth waits to be uncovered. And the most unsettling question of all remains: who, or what, is responsible for the deaths inside the Hackman home?